headlines this week. New figures show millions of Australians are struggling financially. The Church of England is selling its fossil fuel investments. And a church divided for 40 years finds healing.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Ahead of the release of the federal budget this month, two leading Christian welfare agencies have released reports highlighting how millions of Australians are struggling financially. Anglicare Australia's research into 65,000 properties advertised for rent last month found that less than 1% of the homes were affordable for people on government benefits, and people earning the minimum wage are only marginally better off. In a similar vein, a survey of 500 New South Wales households commissioned by Sydney's Wesley Mission found that 44% are suffering financial stress. Both reports say the federal government needs to take more leadership in structuring Australia's economic system so that vulnerable people are not further disadvantaged. As Australia's population ages, the nation will face a number of challenges, including what some are calling a tsunami of Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. According to the ABC, an Australian is diagnosed with Alzheimer's every 6 seconds on average. It's the third most prevalent cause of death in Australia and the second highest for women. But new research from Chicago's Rush University suggests that certain foods can reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's and even slow the progress of mental decline. The star foods were berries, green leafy vegetables and nuts in the context of a plant-based Mediterranean diet. Health experts from the Adventist Church, which has long promoted healthy living, welcome the research.
Certainly the idea around putting more fruits and vegetables into the diet and improving health of a number of different systems is definitely becoming more mainstream. And people have looked at it, of course, with cardiovascular disease. They've looked at it with things like diabetes. What's interesting is that there is this growing number of studies that are showing there that this is also good for the brain. And that shouldn't surprise us, because of course the brain is an organ that's dependent on having healthy nutrients coming into it as much as anywhere else.
The Church of England has decided to withdraw its support from the fossil fuels industry to the tune of £12 million. According to the BBC, the Church will clean up its investment portfolio by cutting out companies that derive more than 10% of their profits from coal mining or from production of oil from tar sands. Church leaders say that climate change is a reality and that they have a moral responsibility to protect the poor, who are the most vulnerable to its effects. The Church of England's investment policy already rules out tobacco and pornography companies and payday lenders. 2015 marks 100 years since more than 1 million Armenians, mostly Christians, were slaughtered or starved during the final years of Turkey's Ottoman Empire. The centenary has reopened old wounds, with the Turkish government still refusing to recognise the scale of the killings or describe them as genocide. But a group of more than 20 Turkish Christians has moved to heal the pain, travelling to Armenia to commemorate the tragedy and apologise on behalf of their ancestors. The Christians laid wreaths and prayed at Armenia's genocide memorial and publicly asked for forgiveness, actions which Armenians described as historic. America and the world was shocked by the city of Baltimore's descent into violence and looting after the death of a young African-American man, Freddie Gray, in police custody. But between the rioting, tear gas and military intervention, a story was emerging of Christian peacemaking, with religious leaders themselves taking to the streets to call for justice and calm. According to the Baltimore Sun, various pastors, priests and imams walked through some of the worst affected areas and knelt for prayer in the street. A statement from the Seventh-day Adventist Church expressed sorrow for Freddie Gray's family, condemned violence and committed to working within the Baltimore community to bring transformation. During a 2-day conference at United Nations headquarters, religious leaders were encouraged to do their part in countering the rise of violent extremism, Christian, Muslim and Jewish leaders were present for the gathering, along with political representatives. Senior UN figures urged those present to unequivocally condemn extremist violence and to work towards fairer, more inclusive societies where extremism is less likely to develop. Religious leaders were particularly encouraged to become involved in interfaith discussions and projects in order to build trusting relationships between religious communities. Dialogue in Hungary has brought together two factions of the Seventh-day Adventist Church that have been at odds for 40 years. During the communist period, church leaders in Hungary agreed to work under government structures, triggering a breakaway movement in 1975 by Adventist pastors and members who became an underground church. After the fall of communism, the different perspectives of the two factions did not allow for unification. But now, with a new generation of leaders and a willingness to apologize for the wrongs of the past, a series of successful consultations have been held, and it appears that reconciliation is at last possible. Ahead of global church meetings in July this year, a group of retired top-level Adventist leaders have launched a campaign in favour of ordaining women pastors.
The whole ordination question boils down to one simple question. Does this person have the gift? And the other part of that question is, if so, who are we not to recognize it?
The group is led by Dr. Jan Paulsen, the most recently retired Adventist World President, and includes administrators, academics, and evangelists with global experience. The Adventist Elders Group says unity can only be preserved if the Church in different regions of the world is allowed to decide on women's ordination according to its own cultural setting.
The Adventist Church needs women at all levels and in all phases of its ministry.
The Faith Comes by Hearing organisation has announced audio Bible versions in 8 new languages, representing more than 2.6 million people around the world. For people who do not read, hearing the Bible read aloud may be the only way they ever experience Scripture, and there's often an extra impact when they hear it in their native tongue. Languages from Asia, Africa, Latin America, Europe and Oceania are included in the latest release, representing long decades of work by Bible translators that needed to be completed before any of the words could be spoken into a microphone.
Kan Yesu taniban kami mama.
Tuburian anganu yatanibin na kami mama o kamo edamim kita sayrian o kolin ta sablana na ramaran raungin.
The Make-A-Wish Foundation makes all kinds of dreams come true for seriously ill kids. But even they were surprised by what made 11-year-old Brett Horbrick's eyes light up. Brett's always enjoyed the pomp and ceremony of Catholic worship and says he likes receiving communion. So when he was offered the chance to be a priest for a day, he jumped at it. According to the St. Louis Review, Brett helped his local archbishop lead Mass at the cathedral for a group of priests and seminarians. His other dream, eating mangoes on the beach, is being organised. That's all for InFocus News this week. To keep up with the latest happenings, visit us at record.net.au. I'll see you next time. God bless.